jungle.
Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is May 6, 2018. I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
This week we are not in the same room doing this, so there might be a little difference in the audio, but we're still going to do it. Not a very interesting week, to say the least, Bobby.
No, not politically wise. It didn't seem like too much happened. It was kind of a boring week politically, although there is a lot of stuff that we have to talk about today on the show.
Yeah, and with that said, let's get into it, starting off with this Michael Cohen updates.
So the first thing that we have is information that the feds were monitoring Michael Cohen's phones. On Thursday, it was revealed that federal investigators were monitoring the call logs of Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen. The monitoring was a pen register only, meaning that records were kept of the numbers that Cohen called and who called him, the time of the calls, and the duration of the calls, but at no point were investigators actually able to listen in on the phone calls. It's not clear how long the monitoring has been going on, but it's believed that it started in the weeks leading up to the FBI raid of Cohen's New York office in early April. NBC News originally reported that Cohen's phone was wiretapped, but they issued a retraction after 3 senior U.S. officials disputed the original claim. So, yeah, it is abundantly clear right now that people working within the government are actively trying to monitor Cohen's phone, and it's possible that whatever warrant they got for this supposed pen register that they were keeping of his phone call possibly might have even been illegal based on the evidence that was used in order to justify them actually getting it.
Yeah, and this is them just trying to put the pressure on Trump by going after his lawyer. And, you know, we talked about this when the stuff with Michael Cohen first broke out, a couple weeks ago now, that really attorney-client privilege is dead in this instance. You know, he's being monitored in every single instance. They've raided his office. What more can they really do to a guy?
Yeah, it's insane that this stuff is even allowed to go on. I think it's also worse the fact that NBC News blatantly went out there and stated that his phone was wiretapped. You'd think that they would actually go in and double check the fact that, you know, a quote-unquote wiretap actually exists. Although, yeah, it's just a pen register, not a wiretap. They couldn't listen in on the conversations, but the fact that they're keeping track of who he's calling, who's calling him, how long they were talking for, when they called, yeah, it definitely hurts attorney-client privilege. I believe they said that at least 1 or 2 of the phone calls were made to the White House or from the White House, so it's possible that those were calls to President Trump. We don't know at this exact moment. But, yeah, you're absolutely right. Attorney-client privilege is dead in this case. Thankfully, I think last week we talked about how there was a judge that ordered, I believe, the judge had ordered something along the lines of saying that all the information that was taken from his office during that raid had to be reviewed by like an independent third party. We might talk about that later in the show as well. So it appears right now that there at least is some people that are kind of firing back and keeping it from going too far, but it's already gone too far at this point.
Yeah, so really that's just an update on it. We don't know all that's happening, but this is what came out this week. Do you want to move on to this Department of Agricultural stuff?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to touch on this because it's pertinent to, you know, Texas, where we're from and where most of our listeners are from as well. And that is the U.S. Department of Agriculture has announced that its Farm Service Agency will provide $2.36 billion in assistance to Texas ranchers and farmers to help recover from the hurricanes and wildfires in 2017. The funding was authorized by the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018. The new 2017 Wildfire Hurricanes Indemnity Program is scheduled to begin by July 16th. Those eligible include ranchers and farmers in counties that were declared disaster areas by President Trump in 2017.
So this is good
So,
news.
so this is
Yeah,
good stuff, yeah.
definitely good.
Uh, you, you know, we saw so much damage to our state to the tune of so many billions of dollars. I mean, I was just thinking back the other day. You you remember what it was like in Houston, where the floodwaters were, you know, so high, destroyed everything.
There are
But
still people
not,
that are living in like trailer camps because of that.
yeah. But not only were major cities like Houston affected, it also affected many rural areas. A lot of East Texas, when you get outside of, the Houston and Galveston area, is extremely rural. So, there's a lot of farms affected, and the Trump administration is doing what is necessary to amend the issues that came from the hurricane.
And not only that, but people need to remember that that entire area of East Texas there, that's kind of east, or I'm sorry, yeah, East Texas, that's west of and north of Houston, is almost entirely agricultural based. There's a reason why Texas A&M University is out there. It's because that's where a majority of the farms and ranches in the state are located. So when the hurricane hit, it absolutely devastated a large number of people that live in that area. And it's great that the federal government is stepping in. I like it when, a lot of people complain about the separation of, states compared to the federal government. But when things like this happen, it's absolutely good that, the federal government is stepping in and helping out people that, through no fault of their own, have their livelihood taken away and the state's economy taken away as well. So 2.36 billion, that's not going to cover everything, but it is going to go a long way into helping these people get back on track.
Yeah. Next, let's get into some statements Trump made this week on term limits.
Yes, President Trump has reaffirmed a campaign pledge to support congressional term limits. On Monday, President Trump tweeted, quote, "I recently had a terrific meeting with a bipartisan group of freshman lawmakers who feel very strongly in favor of congressional term limits. I gave them my full support and endorsement for their efforts. Hashtag drain the swamp." So if you don't remember, back during the campaign, Trump actually promised to support a constitutional amendment placing congressional term limits. And although there hasn't really been any move within Congress to get that done, there is what it seems right now is a small group of people that are at least starting that process. Granted, they're not going to get anything done this legislative session before the midterms, but it's possible, especially if Republicans are able to, gain seats in the Senate and not lose too many in the House. We might have the support to actually go through a push to get that done, especially if Trump is behind it and Trump's the one leading that effort. It'll just be one of those things where we'll see where it goes, but I am glad to see that he is in support of that, because I personally support congressional term limits myself, and I believe you do too. Is that right, Enzo?
Yeah, it would be one of the things that would have the biggest effect. Most people, when they propose term limits for Congress, they want to limit it to 6 total years in the House, 3 separate 2-year terms, which I actually think is fairly short. And I think you do need time to establish yourself in Congress. But I do think that we should get out of the situation where we have people in Congress for decades at, time.
Yeah, the way that I personally would like to see it is because of the fact that Senate terms are 6 years each. I would like to limit it to 2 terms in the Senate, which is 12 years, and then 6 terms in the House, which is also 12 years. That way it's kind of even on both sides. That's what I personally would like to see. That also gives you time to establish yourself in the House. But, at this point, if they were to pass something that would limit it pretty much at all, I would be in support of it, even if it didn't go as far as I wanted, or if it went too far and it limited it to, as you said, like 6 years in the House. I would still support that, because we definitely need to make sure these people that are in there for decades and decades at a time do not have the ability to stay in there for that long of a period of time. So,
Yeah. Let's go into the next thing that we have, and that is some House members have formally nominated Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, a group of 18 Republican lawmakers have formally nominated President Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. The letter was sent by Representative Luke Messer of Indiana to the Norwegian Nobel Committee on Tuesday. It was signed by 17 other members, including Representatives Mark Meadows of North Carolina, Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, Matt Gaetz of Florida, Diane Black of Tennessee, and Steve King of Iowa. The letter, in part, reads, quote, "Although North Korea has evaded demands from the international community to cease its aggression for decades, President Trump's peace through strength policies are working and bringing peace to the Korean Peninsula. We can think of no one more deserving of the committee's recognition in 2019 than President Trump for his tireless work to bring peace to our world." Now, regarding this, I absolutely believe that Trump should get a Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts in North Korea, although I feel like it would be a little bit more legitimate if it was waited until after this whole North Korean and South Korean and U.S. summit that they're going to have, I think later this month or next month, goes through. If at that point there is significant progress being made, I mean there already is, but if North Korea agrees to a lot of more things that the South wants and what we want, to the point where there is long-lasting effort, more so than just agreeing people to get and sit down at the table, Trump is absolutely deserving of this. And even the South Korean president, President Moon, he's even said that he believes that Trump should win a Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts. I mean, they gave it to President Obama for essentially doing absolutely nothing at all. So, Trump working to essentially, bring peace to the Korean Peninsula for the first time in 50 plus years, almost 60 years, is absolutely deserving of it.
Yeah, most definitely. I agree that it's kind of early to call for him to win it now when, we're just starting to see some of the effects of the talks that they've been having towards peace in the Korean Peninsula, and we're still waiting for that summit to come later this month. We're in the middle of the process right now. We should wait towards the final results.
Yeah, we definitely should. That being said, they're not going to award the next ones until 2019, so if stuff does actually succeed, we do have this formal nomination in place already, which would give more legitimacy to them actually going through and then awarding it to him if they decide to do so. So the fact that they at least wrote the thing right now, I do actually think that's a good idea. I just think I agree with you. I feel like it's a little too early, but at least they got the thing done.
Yeah. The next thing that we wanted to talk about is some approval rating numbers for Trump. Not the 51% voter approval rating that Rasmussen put out this week, but rather a Reuters poll on Trump's approval rating amongst African Americans.
Yeah, so a Reuters poll taken on April 22nd had President Trump's approval among black men at 11%. The same Reuters poll on April 29th, a week later, a week after Kanye West stole the world's attention by publicly coming out in support of President Trump, shows that Trump's support among black men has now doubled to 22%. That's over 1 in 5. Trump experienced a similar jump in approval among blacks overall, spiking from 8.9% on April 22nd to 16.5% on April 29th. And if you do the math, it shows that Trump's support among black females has risen from only 3.4% to 5.5%. So, still low among black women, but, it's also seen a rise. And black males were also far more likely to say that they had mixed feelings about Trump, because on the 22nd, only 1.5% of black males said they had mixed feelings, while on the same poll on the 29th showed that to be at 7.1%. So, a lot of people like to dismiss the whole Kanye West thing, saying, it's not worth it, he's not really doing anything, it's not making a difference. But, the data and statistics show that, a lot of people do look up to, figures and leaders in the black community. And I'm not saying that Kanye West is one of those, but the fact that he has done what he has done, has said the things that he has said, has opened a lot of people's eyes to things that they might not originally actually look at. I mean, even Kanye was talking about how the black unemployment rate is at a record low. We're going to talk about that later in the program. A lot, wages are rising for people in general, blacks included, and so I think the most important factor necessarily isn't that 22% among black males, but the fact that that whole mixed feelings thing shows that, you had less than 2% were mixed, now it's 7.1%. So although there is a lot of people, or a lot of black men that have now at least said, yeah, I do support the work that President Trump is doing, there are a lot of them also that aren't really saying yes, I support, but they're also not saying no either. And the fact that that is up in the air bids really well for the midterms. I mean, can you imagine if you can keep black male support at 22%? For President Trump, even if that doesn't translate into Republican votes, if that can even translate to like maybe 15% of the black community votes for Republicans as opposed to only 10%, all of a sudden you don't have to worry about states like Florida possibly flipping blue in 2020 if you can somehow keep that through the next election, and also states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, where you have a lot of a very heavy black population that can very much influence the vote. If you can even get 5% more blacks to stay on President Trump's side come 2020, you don't have to worry about those states possibly being, flipped back blue. Because that translates to at least 1, maybe even 2% of the entire voting block of those states that might swing back to being Republican. You might actually win those states by even higher margins because of that alone. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but, it's interesting the fact that, if anyone could have even said 2 weeks ago that, a month from now, you're going to see President Trump's support among black males at 1 in 5 as opposed to only 1 in 10, people would think you're crazy, and yet here we are.
Yeah, and you look into the Democratic electoral scheme, they can't afford to lose much support from the black community. I remember we were talking prior to the election, you look at numbers, if they had less than 90% for Hillary, they're going to lose. And what did we see? We saw just that. If Trump can maintain this approval rating of around 16.5%, that's still, much better than traditionally Republicans have ever done amongst black Americans. So, it's good stuff.
Yeah, and there's one more thing I would like to point out, and that's that if you have so many blacks that don't support Trump, that means that they are more likely to go out and vote for Democrats or people that aren't Trump in elections. But if you can even get people that do support him out there, what I'm pretty much trying to say is if even that many less people don't not support him, that means that they're probably not likely to show up and vote against him, meaning that if you have even a slight bit of blacks vote for Republicans or for Trump that didn't prior, and then the other ones that don't necessarily, that 7% that say they have mixed feelings, those are the people that are most likely to just not show up to vote at all, rather than people that are swung one way or another. And the fact that you had a decreased black voter turnout from 2008 and 2012 is part of the reason why we won states like Florida overall. And, possibly even states like Michigan and Pennsylvania as well. So if you can even get that many more people to show up and vote to your side that aren't showing up to vote, or that normally would show up to vote that just don't show up to vote, all of a sudden, you really do start swinging elections. And that really matters also at the individual congressional district level as well.
Yeah, most definitely.
But I'm ready.
Some really good stuff there.
Yeah, and the next story that we have also kind of has to deal with that if you're ready to move on to it.
Yeah.
So the next story we have is Trump wants to invite Kanye West and Colin Kaepernick to the White House for a race summit. President Trump has stated his intentions to invite rapper Kanye West and former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick to the White House for a summit on race relations. Cleveland pastor Darrell Scott, who is an outside advisor to the White House who attended ceremonies for Thursday's National Day of Prayer, stated that Trump is 100% for it and that he was very enthusiastic about it, wanting to bring this nation together. Scott has been working with the White House on prison reform issues and has helped with a White House-backed plan to revitalize poor urban neighborhoods. Scott and Andrew Giuliani, who is the son of Rudy Giuliani, who recently joined President Trump's legal team, are the ones who are currently organizing the summit. And although the details of the summit will be ironed out over the next week, it's expected that the summit will be held sometime in early summer, so possibly June, maybe even into July. But other people that have been invited include Mike Tyson and former Cleveland Browns player Jim Brown. Pastor Scott also says that these guys are on the president's side. So, a lot of people talk about how during the years of President Obama, race relations kind of, deteriorated a lot. And although, it seems like it's getting worse and worse, at least you have someone out there who is, at least trying to get people, it's kind of like the whole North Korea situation. Get people to sit down at the table and discuss the issues rather than just ignoring each other and hating each other. I'm not saying that Trump's going to actually fix race relations in this country. I don't think that's ever going to happen. In fact, I think they're going to continue to get worse. But if you can at least, set the cards on the table for things possibly maybe getting even slightly better in certain ways, I'm all for that.
Yeah, and personally, Trump has played a part in race relations being worse in this country, but I think it is a testament to his actual, his feelings that he actually cares for the country at large, that he wants to bring in these individuals to talk about race relations, especially, Colin Kaepernick being so radically, leftist on it and so militantly supporting with his support for Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and if a lot of people that hate Trump have always said, and we've seen this time and time again, we've mentioned this on the show prior, people who actually sit down and have meetings with Trump always say the same thing. They always say he's very generous, he's always caring, he likes to listen to what people have to say, and he's a good negotiator. And so, a lot of these people, especially guys like Colin Kaepernick that don't have very good feelings about Trump, you get them down, you get them to sit there, across the table or next to each other and just sit there and talk, you can get some really good progress that comes out of that. And so, like we said, I don't think this is actually going to fix anything, but I'm just curious to see where it goes, especially if you have, some more leaders of the black community come out and support and, say that they support Trump, or at least come out and say that, Trump isn't as bad a guy as we thought, and we should be coming together, as Americans to work through our issues rather than just hating each other all the time.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's get into the next story that we have, though, which is related to Mueller.
Yeah, so a judge, or I'll just read it here, a federal judge in Virginia has limited the power of special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, saying that Mueller should not have unlimited power in probing alleged ties between Trump's campaign and Russia. The judge in the case, U.S. District Judge T.S. Ellis III, questioned whether Mueller exceeded his authority in filing tax and bank fraud charges against Paul Manafort. The judge said, quote, "You really don't care about Mr. Manafort. You really care about what information Mr. Manafort can give you to lead to Mr. Trump and his eventual prosecution and possible impeachment." Judge Ellis has also given Mueller 2 weeks to sign off on a sealed, unredacted version of the memo that prompted the case against Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen. So, this is one of those things that, people didn't really see coming, but there's actually just a judge that has kind of jumped in the way of Mueller's probe, literally saying, look, what you're looking at has nothing to do with Russia. If you want to go over after Paul Manafort, you're going after things like tax and bank fraud charges. That has nothing to do with Russia. That has nothing to do with any supposed collusion. And if you don't, give us the information we want to show why these things are even happening in the first place, we're going to, stop you from being able to do some of these things. So, this Judge T.S. Ellis III is a Reagan appointee. So, thankfully there are some people in there that still have our back.
And the stuff on Manafort is for stuff that, Manafort was doing in Ukraine prior to the U.S. election, prior to even being involved with Donald Trump at all. And the stuff related to Cohen, they're trying to get him on connections with Stormy Daniels, which, what does that have to do with Russians? Nothing whatsoever. And that's the problem. They didn't put a scope on the Mueller probe. They never really do put a sufficient scope on any of these probes, which are why they're bad to begin with. But, we've given Mueller way too much power to just look into anything and everything, trying to find anything to pin to Donald Trump. This has been going on for over a year. If he can't produce anything at the moment right now, why are we supposed to believe that anything will change in the future? He's had plenty of time and tons of resources and wasted a lot of money.
And it also seems like as Mueller's team is continuing to go after things that are obviously unrelated to Russia or, any supposed Russian collusion, it just shows how desperate they're trying to get. And it's absolutely obvious to anyone paying attention that the whole point of the probe is to bring down Trump's presidency. It's not to find, supposed Russian collusion. It's to try to impeach Trump if Democrats win in the midterms. Now, it does seem like the possibility of that happening is decreasing over time because of the fact that they're found absolutely no evidence linking Trump to Russia at all. And also for the fact that, it looks like Democrat chances of actually winning back the House in the midterms here are decreasing as well. The Mueller probe is kind of going nowhere at this point, and that's why you're seeing things like the whole Stormy Daniels stuff is being pushed, because that's really all they have. They have, what was it, $130,000 payment that was part of a non-disclosure agreement that Stormy Daniels herself violated, essentially, giving her money to just shut up and not talk about it. She's the one who broke the law there. She's the one who broke the NDA. And then, we see that, Trump paid back Cohen for the money that was paid to him. Yeah, because Cohen gives Trump his bill, and as part of his bill is millions probably of dollars in just legal fees for different things that he was having him do. Trump wasn't the one looking through that, looking line by line to see where every single cent went. And so, you have things like that they try to say, Trump colluded this, Trump did that. Trump violated campaign finance law by paying his lawyer back for a payment that he made to, a porn star who's lying and violated a non-disclosure agreement. It's absolutely insane, and Mueller's investigation needs to be shut down as soon as possible.
Yeah, most definitely. It's just kind of, stuff we've been saying for so long, but we keep on getting more and more validation, and finally we're seeing the judiciary somewhat on our side on it.
Yeah.
Still kind of on the same topic of Mueller, we got some new stuff on Lisa Page this week, actually.
Yeah, Lisa Page, the FBI attorney who exchanged anti-Trump text messages with her lover Peter Strzok and was fired from Mueller's team, has tendered her resignation from the FBI. Page has faced scrutiny after the text messages showing her bias became public. She is also the official who convinced former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe to leak documents to the Wall Street Journal regarding the FBI's handling of the Clinton email investigation. So, we can only speculate as to why she has resigned from the FBI. If her career was successful, she probably would not be doing that. There could be reasons that they're going after her or they're going after Strzok. We know they're going after McCabe. We know she is involved with that. So, resigning from the FBI is one of those things where it's just kind of her trying to save face for any possible indictments that might be coming to her lap there. So it's good that she is no longer in the FBI, meaning that she can't cause any more trouble by doing the job that she normally does. So I'm glad to see her gone, and I hope the door hits her on the way out.
And I hope she, eventually down the road is prosecuted for the stuff that she's been involved in. Because, she, along with all the other individuals she was around, McCabe and Comey and all these folks, all they've done is they've protected Hillary for, committing crimes while trying to work within the bureaucracy to take down a democratically elected president and President Donald Trump.
Yeah, so much for having an unbiased FBI, right?
Yeah, we're supposed to have, the utmost respect for these people.
Which is funny because
they don't conduct themselves like professionals.
No, I was going to say,
not all of them.
Yeah, what you said was absolutely accurate. It's like we're supposed to have the utmost respect for these people, but these people have the least amount of respect that I have for probably any people on the planet right now. Or at least it's very, very low. And, the level of trust that I have in these people is virtually non-existent. So,
yeah. Let's go on now to the last of the top of the stack news that we wanted to get into, which is some news I didn't want to have to hear this week, but it happened, and that is Andrew Homan, the acting director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has announced that he is going to be retiring this June. He was officially announced his intentions to retire at an event in New York City on Monday night. Homan was named acting director of ICE back in January of 2017. Homeland Security Secretary Kristen Nielsen said Homan told her this year that he intended to retire, that she asked him to remain to assist with the transition. The top two candidates who may fill the role upon Homan's retirement would be Peter Edge, the top official at ICE's Homeland Security Investigations and the next in chain of command, or Matthew Albence, the head of enforcement and removal operations. However, Edge has stated his intention to retire later this year as well. So, Andrew Homan has been one of the few people in the Trump administration that has done a really good job, and he was actually a part of the Obama administration, but once the shackles were taken off of, his wrists and he was allowed to actually do his job, he's done a great job, and he's been, on the cutting edge of going against sanctuary cities, being unafraid of, directly enforcing sanctuary cities without the consent of the police there or the city councils that put up these, laws that don't have any actual standing. So I'm glad Homan has been there for the ride, and I hope he enjoys retirement.
Yeah, and part of the reason why he's retiring is, he's only the acting director of ICE right now. He was never officially able to make it through the Senate to actually be, confirmed as the real, legitimate director. A lot of that has to do with the fact that there are a lot of Democrats in Congress that just, stood in the way of his application to do that. And that had been going on for over a year as well. And part of that, that's not the main reason why he's retiring. The reason he's retiring is because he's been working for so long and he wants to spend more time with his family. But at the same time, when you have a lot of people in Congress actively trying to make sure that you don't get the official, position that you're essentially working at right now, that can be very disheartening. So, I don't blame him for wanting to retire. He's done a fantastic job. I applaud him for his efforts. I consider him a national hero at this point. It'll be sad to see him go, but I'm glad that he was able to do what he did with the time that he had with us.
Yeah. With that said, let's get into some things about the economy this week.
Yes.
The first thing that we want to talk about is some unemployment numbers.
Yeah. Data released Friday shows that the official unemployment rate hit 3.9% in April, breaking below the 4% threshold for the first time since December 2000, which is a 17-year low. The black unemployment rate dropped to 6.6%, which is also the lowest rate on record. As we mentioned, we were talking about the whole Kanye West thing. And also, finally, the U.S. economy has added over 2.7 million jobs since President Trump took office. So, as we said, we're continuing to see good things regarding the economy, and hopefully it continues. Is frankly all I have to say. We've said so much about it in past episodes.
Yeah, President Trump said that he was going to become the greatest jobs president of all time, and it looks like he's fulfilled on that so far, even though that's not all personally attributed to things that he's done. He hasn't affected it in any sort of negative way.
No, definitely not. So
the other thing that we wanted to talk about this week, though, is how Americans are fleeing high-tax states. You are especially seeing this now after we passed the tax cuts back at the end of last year. But over the past decade, 3.5 million Americans have moved from high-taxed states to lower-tax states. This included 2.2 million who have left New York and California alone. Texas has gained nearly 1.4 million new residents, and Florida has gained around 850,000. Neither have a state income tax. Economists estimate that both California and New York will lose a net of 800,000 residents over the next 3 years, roughly twice the numbers that left from the years 2014 to 2016. Additionally, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Minnesota combined will lose around 500,000 people in the same period. Much of this is due to the new tax law that no longer allows upper-income Americans to deduct state and local taxes from their federally taxed incomes, affecting roughly 10% of Americans. So it's interesting. The number on residents that came to Texas, I'm actually one of them myself. Wisconsin has very high taxes and has state income tax as well, and that was one of the push factors for my family coming to Texas, and we're obviously not alone in this.
No, and one of the problems with all these people, especially coming to Texas from these high tax states like New York and Texas, most of them, a lot of them come from California, is the fact that they get to these states and then they continue to vote for the same policies that they decided to leave. You see that especially in Austin, where you have a lot of California transplants living there. But one of the side effects of this is just how it's going to change the balance of power in Congress come the 2020 census. If California is losing a lot of people, New York is losing a lot of people, they're probably going to either lose seats in Congress or, not gain any more seats in Congress, whereas Texas is set to gain like at least 2 to 3 more seats, which definitely affects things like the Electoral College going forward. California, they're possibly going to lose, we've talked about on the show before, if they don't count illegal immigrants as part of the census, California might lose up to 4 or 5 congressional seats because of this. And if those go to other Midwestern states or other states across the country with smaller populations, Texas is going to become, it's going to have more power in Congress. So, it's one of those things where we'll have to continue to see how that continues. And hopefully these people that leave these high tax states will learn from their mistakes and vote for lower taxes, aka, not supporting extreme liberal policies like they did back home. And I do tend to believe that a lot of the people that have left these places are more conservative because of the fact that they care about things like their taxes.
Yeah, and I was going to bring up, the stuff that we've talked about on past episodes, how the Trump administration wants to put immigration status on the census that will obviously discourage illegal aliens from filling out the census. And that's going to have a profound impact, especially on California. And when you talk about them losing representatients, not only do they lose representatives, they lose electoral power.
Right.
You lose, points in the Electoral College. So in terms of the 2020 election, California might actually matter even less.
Well, I mean, actually, technically not the 2020 election, the 2024 election, because 2020 will still be using the same numbers as we are now. But 2024 and 2028 will be the 2 elections that are affected by that before the next census happens in 2030. So, it will affect congressional races through the 2020s. And it's amazing how just a simple thing like a tax reform law can really just affect how Congress is even shaped. But yeah, we'll see where that goes. And it's good news that these people are leaving because they're realizing, I can't afford this. Maybe things should change.
Yeah. With that said, let's get into some immigration news for the week.
Open the door! Immigration!
La migra, vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
So for the first thing that we want to talk about, it's something that we've been waiting for a long time that has been threatened for months now, and that is states suing the federal government over DACA.
Right. 7 states, led by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who you and I have both met, have filed a lawsuit against the federal government to seek an end to the DACA program after efforts by the Trump administration to end the program have been continuously blocked by far-left judges. The 6 other states are Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Nebraska, South Carolina, and West Virginia. The lawsuit asks for all DACA permits to be rescinded or for the administration to be blocked from issuing or renewing any new requests. The suit seeks to challenge the constitutionality of the DACA program altogether. The Trump administration has also previously stated their intention to let lawsuits bring an end to the DACA program and have vowed not to fully defend the case to their full extent in court. Which essentially means that these states are going to sue the government, and the government's going to be like, yeah, okay, you're suing us, sure, we'll let that go through. Yeah, let it end. So, this is, I hate to say it, but this is kind of plan B in order to get rid of DACA, but I feel like it might actually be the stronger way to get it done, simply because of the fact that the federal government is not really going to defend the DACA program in these court cases, and also the court case was originally filed in the Southern District Court of Texas, and that essentially means that we have friendlier judges on our side in order to, get this thing going forward. So through the appeals process, if it does make its way to the Supreme Court, is more favorable to us than if this was to happen in, like, say, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals or something like that.
And, this relates to what we reported last week on DACA, which was kind of some bad news with judges ruling that the Trump administration needs to restate its legal argument for the ending of DACA within the next 90 days. Otherwise, DACA will have to be restarted. And, these lawsuits are helpful in that we might not even have to deal with that other, pending case at all. This might just be all we need.
Yeah, and plus, the way things kind of work in the government is if you have multiple different lawsuits regarding the same thing, you kind of go with whatever is the most recent decision that's made. So if a judge in the Southern District Court of Texas can have at least some sort of initial ruling on DACA before that 90 days is up, then that new ruling becomes precedent going forward. And then it'll have to see, where does the other lawsuit go? Where do, the other judges that are anti-Trump, I guess I could use that term, what do they say? How do they go compared to where is this actual lawsuit with 7 states going? It's so definitely is probably going to help us, but, we'll just have to wait and see really how long it takes, because I think we kind of know what the outcome is going to be for that case.
Yeah. So the next thing that we wanted to go into is that there's this new poll from Numbers USA, one of the leading organizations in patriotic immigration reform. And quote-unquote extreme immigration policies turn out to be actually very popular. So the poll was amongst 1,000 likely midterm voters, and here are some of the findings. 59% said new immigrants should be able to bring their spouses and minor children, but not extended family members. When respondents were told that the United States awards 1 million green cards a year and gives 6 different choices for possible immigration levels, and were given 6 different choices for possible immigration levels, the most popular range was 250,000 or less. Nearly half, or 49%, chose that option, which is well below any proposed to date by politicians in Washington. Only 17% chose the status quo or an immigration increase. Told Congress is considering eliminating 250,000 chain migration visas a year, respondents by a margin of 53% to 24% favored reducing immigration rather than redistributing those visas to allow businesses to bring in more foreign workers. By a margin of 52% to 24%, respondents favored requiring all businesses to use e-verify systems to check the legal status of new hirees under legislation to grant amnesty to young adult illegal immigrants who came to America as children. By a margin of 63% to 20%, respondents rejected granting amnesty to the young illegal aliens if the legislation kept the status quo on chain migration, e-verify, and current immigration levels. And what all these numbers show that pluralities and majorities amongst Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and Hispanics were held on every single question proposed. So this isn't a partisan issue at all. Americans favor a reduction in legal immigration across the board.
Yeah, and it's amazing just how it doesn't really seem like that if all you do is spend your time like on Twitter or something and you see just how much these people like to fight against, our efforts to try to like reduce legal immigration numbers and stuff. These people don't realize that they are part of a minority. I like that one number that shows that only 24% of people want, only 24% of people don't want to require businesses to use E-Verify, whereas 52% do. Like you said, pluralities among Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, and even Hispanics even, especially Hispanics in Texas, a lot of them support what we're doing with immigration, trying to cut those numbers, because a lot of Hispanics that live in Texas, their families go back generations, and they don't like to see what's going on regarding, illegal immigration and how that's affecting the state, how that's affecting the country, and how these people are being essentially rewarded for breaking the law. I can understand exactly where these people are coming from, but yeah, we definitely need to reduce the number of immigrants that we take into this country, and we need to make sure the people that are already in this country, that are illegal immigrants, no matter how long they've lived here, no matter what they're doing, no matter what they have done, they get deported and go back to their home country, because that's where they belong.
Yeah, and one of the biggest, most startling findings is nearly half of Americans want less than 250,000 immigrants coming here illegally, and no politician represents that mindset, which is, the most popular of all the options that were presented.
Yeah, because you said there was, what,
So
six?
it really goes to show that only 17% chose the status quo or an increase in immigration.
Yeah, and you said there was, what, 6 different choices, and of those 6, almost half chose one of those options alone? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Especially since it's the option that we like the best of those options that are there.
And, most people favoring getting rid of chain migration and not redistributing those visas, which kind of goes against what Trump was saying at that Michigan rally he had last week, saying that, we need to bring in all these people to work in the farms. Most people don't support giving out these kind of business visas.
No, they don't. So, hopefully in the midterms we'll get a few more people on our side that actually, would take this data and put that in front of Congress and be like, look, I'm supporting this bill that cuts legal immigration. Here's why. It's supported by a majority of Americans all across the board, or at least a plurality in most parts. So, it really goes to show any person in Congress that stands in the way of us reducing legal immigration numbers is against the will of the people. And, frankly, their opinion at that point, if you believe in quote-unquote democracy, should be factored in, and those people should be removed from power via the voting booth. So,
yeah. Moving on, though, we have an update on the situation of cities going against California's sanctuary state policy, and a new city has joined the list of cities joining the lawsuit against them. The City Council of Costa Mesa, California, has become the latest Orange County city to declare official opposition to California's sanctuary laws. Costa Mesa Mayor Pro Tempore Alan Mansour said, quote, This is not about bashing immigrants. If this was about bashing immigrants, I'd be bashing my parents. My parents both immigrated here legally, and they have taught me to respect legal immigration and upholding our laws.
So yeah.
So it really goes to show that, there are a lot of people in California that don't agree with the sanctuary state policy whatsoever. And, this is just adding to the long list of now Orange County cities that have declared opposition to the policy.
Yeah, and I like the fact that there are more cities that are joining it. I mean, it's got to be, I think it's around like 20 or so cities right now throughout Southern California, most of them being in Orange County, including Orange County itself, that have declared that they are against California's sanctuary state policies. So, hopefully by these cities joining, that'll give a little bit more, little boost to the, I'm not sure if it's necessarily a lawsuit, but I should say the movement against California's sanctuary state policies. I know there is a lawsuit that is currently being filed in California to get rid of it. So, the more cities you have on your side, the better. And I really don't think that California is going to be able to keep that much longer if so many cities start spiraling out of control at that point. They're going to have to make some changes, is essentially what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. With that said, let's get into probably some of the worst news on immigration this week, and that is illegal immigration is massively up. Illegal immigration on the southern border is up 230% in April from a year prior. Brandon Judd, president of the National Border Patrol Council, says that around 75% of border arrests end in catch and release. Crossings are now back to Obama-era levels. The administration acknowledges the issues of catch and release, but limited bed space and court orders limit the ability of immigration officials to hold illegal aliens.
Yeah, and when I saw this...
So essentially, the Trump effect is over.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing about these numbers is when you're talking about this increase of 230% from April of last year, when April of last year happened is when immigration was still down like 70%, or I'm sorry, border crossings were down about 70%. So if you take that 30% number and then you increase it back to where it was, if, at that 100% level, that's an increase of 230% right there. And so, a lot of people are like, oh my God, immigration is so massively back up. It's like, well, yes, technically it is, but at the same time, it's only back to where it was because it hasn't really increased higher than that. Now, that being said, it's still very, very bad, and it's especially bad for the fact that these people that are caught are released because of the fact that you've limited bed space and the courts try to get in their way of doing things like that. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it sounds worse than it actually is, even though it is very, very bad. It's people using, what they say,
so it really goes to show that.
Yeah, they always say lies, damn lies, and statistics. Well, here's your statistics.
Yeah, it really goes to show that the need for the wall is now needed more than ever, and there needs to be more support for building detention centers so we can stop the practice of catch and release.
Exactly.
Going on to the next story now, we got an update on the Caravan. As of now, 158 members of the Caravan have now applied for asylum in the United States. On Monday, Jeff Sessions and his Justice Department sent 35 additional assistant U.S. attorneys and 18 immigration judges to the border to deal with the excess flow of asylum claims. Asylum claims since 2011 have increased tenfold. President Trump has tweeted that he has told DHS not to allow the Caravan members to be allowed asylum, but that doesn't stop them from applying or stop the legal process from occurring afterwards. So, for the most part, none of these people are going to be given asylum whatsoever, because how asylum law works, you have to apply in the first safe country you land in, which for these individuals would be Mexico,
right?
Not the United States, but they are still entitled to apply for asylum in the United States, and we have to go through the system, which is why we sent out all of these judges and assistant attorneys to go deal with the excess claims of asylum, because it's not only the Caravan, it's also all across the border we're seeing many people applying for asylum.
Yeah, and a lot of people are liking to, a lot of people are freaking out about just how many members of the of that Caravan crossed the border. I mean, I think it was only maybe 50 or 75 of them actually made it across. Most of them were arrested in doing so. I haven't heard any reports that it was any more than that. A lot of these people that have applied for asylum are still in Mexico right now. They haven't actually crossed into the United States. So a lot of people are freaking out about how many people oh my God, 12 of these people made it across the border. And it's like, yeah, that's bad. But at the same time, there's thousands of people that illegally cross the border every day that aren't caught. And you're worried about these 25 or 30 people that were able to make it across. It's phony outrage, even though the outrage is legitimate. We need to make sure that these people don't get asylum. We need to make sure that the Trump administration does not go back on its, essentially promise at this point to not give these people asylum. So, I hate to say it, but this is one of those things where, again, we'll have to see where it goes. But at least as of right now, it looks like these people are not going to get asylum. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Continuing on, I just mentioned that 75% of people caught at the border are catch and release, and Trump has actually talked about this week wanting a legislative push on ending that practice.
Yeah, President Trump is gearing up to push for a major legislative agenda this summer centered around ending catch and release, according to White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. Gidley later said, quote, "Congressional Democrats endanger public safety and national security because they oppose the administration's efforts and that they put the interests of illegal immigrants and corporate donors ahead of the needs of hundreds of millions of American citizens." Legislative Affairs Director Mark Short is leading the effort to officially end catch and release before the midterm elections. Recent polling also shows that 47% of GOP voters say that immigration and national security are the biggest issues facing our nation, compared to only 11% of GOP voters who said the same of taxes. So, yeah, polling shows immigration number one priority among GOP voters, and catch and release is part of the reason why you have so many people that cross the border that get caught that are still allowed to stay in this country, because none of them are ever going to show up for their court date. We know that. We know the statistics behind that. And so, Trump has been talking a lot recently about ending catch and release. When he had his rally in Michigan, he even had a part where he was talking about ending catch and release. So it looks like that is something that they might actually be able to accomplish before the midterms, especially if they make that a legislative priority over the summer. Obviously, it takes time to be able to write up these laws and then implement, or at least try to implement your strategy of trying to get it passed. That stuff takes time. So that's definitely something that is long overdue for an overhaul, long overdue for an end. But at least it looks like we're now at least starting the process of actually, getting that done.
And the process encourages people to immigrate here illegally because they don't fear being detained for being caught trying to cross the border. So that has a lot to do with people trying to come here.
Exactly.
Continuing on with news this week, have an update. Well, we have a story about some of the happenings George Soros has been up to, which we don't really talk about Soros too much on this show. I don't really like all the conspiracy kind of stuff around this when we usually talk about George Soros, but this is something you can objectively point to him doing, and that is he is helping fund an app to help illegal aliens avoid deportation. The app Notifica, which is notify in Spanish, has been created by a group called United We Dream, which is created by a taxpayer-funded organization. The app gives automatic alerts to family members, immigration lawyers, and others to the presence of ICE officials. So not only is George Soros funding this, but also taxpayers have put dollars towards the creation of this organization, which is creating an app to help aid and abet illegal aliens, which is a crime.
Yeah, and so I really think that, you might be able to stretch laws here, but if I was in charge of the Justice Department, what I would be doing is really going after these people that are just blatantly, trying to break the law. Like, I would absolutely agree that the people that are creating this law or creating this app definitely are doing so to try to aid and abet illegal aliens in this country, which is a crime. Therefore, I would say that any programmer that programs this app should go to jail. Any person who funds this app should go to jail. And, it's questionable whether or not you could say that any app marketplaces that host the app should face legal trouble, but they should definitely face some sort of scrutiny for allowing, people to essentially break the law by, using an app that's available on their marketplace. So, I would like to see more done to stop things like this. But at this point, there's really nothing we can do right now other than just point out the fact that it exists, and you need to be careful with what these people are doing with their power.
Yeah, it's very outrageous. Continuing on down the stack with immigration, the Trump administration this week has ended temporary protected status for around 50,000 Honduran nationals this week. President Trump is ending the temporary protected status around 50,000 Honduran nationals who have lived in the United States since 1999. Around 85,000 Hondurans came to the United States after Hurricane Mitch hit the country in 1998. Around only 50,000 of those still remain. DHS Secretary Kristen Nielsen said that the conditions in Honduras has dramatically improved, meaning their reasoning for not returning home has diminished. The Trump administration is giving them 19 months to return to Honduras or face deportation. Or also they could apply for, immigration here as well for legal residents. But we've seen this done with Haitians, El Salvadorans, Hondurans, and the first letter in TPS is T, temporary. But we have so many people that think that this is supposed to be some sort of permanent immigration status for these people, because they come from, Honduras, and that's not the case.
No, and Honduras really isn't the best country in the world, but at the same time, conditions have dramatically, increased, like they said, from, right after a major strong hurricane like Hurricane Mitch hit back in 1998, which would understandably cause people to want to flee because it's unlivable, in most areas there. But, conditions have increased. There's no reason for these people to still be living in the U.S. Congratulations, you got to live here for 20 years, 20 successful, I could say, years, peaceful years probably of your life. Use what you have learned and gained in your 20 years here to make your country a better place after you get sent back, is all I have to say to these people at that point.
Yeah. But, yeah, this is stuff that we should be doing and continuing to do. Moving on to the last story for immigration this week. Another story that just kind of really irritates the hell out of me. And that is, Catholic churches have been handing out fake IDs to illegal aliens. Some illegal aliens living in North Texas are receiving church-issued ID cards through a local partnership. What's worse is that the Dallas, Carrollton, and Farmers Branch police departments have agreed to take them in place of other state-issued IDs, but only at the discretion of each officer. According to Dallas Area Interfaith, thousands of illegal aliens have filed applications and several hundred cards have already been issued. Texas law does not allow these ID cards to be used to vote. A Pulse Opinion research poll taken in March found that 68% of Catholic likely voters said that annual legal immigration should be cut. Only 20% of Catholics chose to keep immigration numbers the same or raise them.
That's about the same numbers as what we were seeing from that other poll.
Yeah, just about the same. And you look at the Harvard-Harris immigration poll from a couple months back, around 81% of people want a reduction in legal immigration. So, most of the people that are American citizens going to these churches do not agree with what these churches are doing, but they do it anyways because the Catholic churches want to fill their pews. It's a part of their economic bottom line. And, a lot of these illegal aliens coming from Mexico and Central America are Catholic, so they encourage this stuff to happen.
Yeah, so it's definitely something to watch out for. Luckily, like you said there, Texas law does not allow these ID cards to be used to vote. So if you're worried that they're going to be able to use these things to vote, they still cannot. That's still probably not going to stop them from trying. But yeah, we definitely need to go after, the Catholic churches in northern Texas for doing this because they definitely should not be allowed to.
Most definitely. With that said, let's get into some 2018 elections news.
So the first things first is this upcoming Tuesday, there are 4 states that are holding their primaries. Those are the states of Indiana, North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia. Now, I don't want to take too much time going over all of these things, but there are some races that we do want to point out. Now, again, this is the primary. This is not the general election, so, the way things happen in the Democrats and the way things happen in the Republicans is fighting amongst themselves, not fighting against each other. So we're just going to go through these real quick, starting with Indiana. In Indiana, there are no governor races in 2018 this year, so we don't have to worry about that. The Senate race, however, is the one that is important because it's one of the ones that, it's a Democrat in a state that Trump won by big time. Now, the senator on the Democrat side is Joe Donnelly, and he's currently running unopposed, so he is going to be the nominee come November. On the Republican side, though, there are 3 main people that we want to focus on. That's Mike Braun, Luke Messer, and Todd Reutka. Mike Braun is currently trading. Now, I'm going to read these off here to say kind of, where these people stand and who has the highest likelihood of actually winning these things. If you've ever heard of the website Predict It, it's a website that's essentially political betting, and people can bet money on who they believe, based on different information that they own factor in, who they believe is going to win different races or things are going to happen. I won over $100 on election night back in 2016 on Predict It, simply because of, betting on Trump winning different states. It's a decent indicator of who's going to win different races, although it's not 100% accurate. So take this with a grain of salt. If you're listening to this after Tuesday night, you'll probably already know who wins, but we're just going to go through these really, really quickly. So Mike Braun is the former Indiana state rep from 2014 to 2017. He founded a company, and he's currently trading at 64 cents on Predict It, which is first. So Mike Braun looks like the guy who's probably end up going to win this thing. Second is Luke Messer, who, if you remember from earlier when we were talking about the show, he signed that letter supporting Trump for getting a Nobel Peace Prize. He also founded the Congressional School Choice Caucus. I forgot to mention he's the representative for Indiana's 6th congressional district right now. He's been endorsed by U.S. Representative Susan Brooks from Indiana's 5th district. He's currently trading at 11 cents unpredicted, which is in 3rd place. And also the last person is Todd Reutka. He's the representative for Indiana's 4th district, and he says he's pro-Trump, but he is currently trading 2nd place at 38 cents. He is also the former Indiana Secretary of State from 2003 to 2011. So of those 3 people there, 2 of them are currently in the United States House of Representatives, so they have a good movement to try to, go against Joe Donnelly in November. But right now it looks like Mike Braun is going to be the one that wins, but we'll see how that goes. Now, in terms of House races, there's really only 2 races that we want to focus on in Indiana, and even them, they don't really matter because they're both open primaries in extremely Republican districts. The first is District 4, which has a CPVI of R plus 17, meaning whoever is the Republican nominee is going to win. There's 3 people there. There's Jim Baird, Steve Braun, and Diego Morales. Now, Mike Braun and Steve Braun, I do not believe are related at all. Jim Baird is currently trading in 3rd place. He is an Indiana state rep and a Vietnam War veteran. Steve Braun is currently trading 1st place at 70 cents unpredicted. He's an Indiana state rep, and he's also been endorsed by the Indiana Chamber of Commerce. And the 3rd person is Diego Morales, who is a U.S. Army vet. He was actually the former senior advisor to Governor Mike Pence when he was governor of Indiana. He's trading at 12 cents unpredicted. Now, House District 6 is an R plus 18 district. It's an open primary, and it's one that I really want to focus on because of one person who is running. And the person that's running is Greg Pence, who is the older brother of Vice President Mike Pence. He's also been endorsed by pretty much everybody. He's been endorsed by the current guy who's the representative for Indiana's 6th district. He has also been endorsed by House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, House Majority Whip Steve Scalise, Houston Texans owner Bob McNair, and Newsmax CEO Christopher Rudy. He's currently trading at 93 cents unpredicted, so yeah, he's going to win that. He's going to win that primary. Since it's such a Republican district, it looks like Mike Pence's older brother is going to be in the House of Representatives, which means that's one absolute guaranteed pro-Trump vote that we have in Congress that we may or may not have had before, but we're definitely going to have. The other guy is Jonathan Lamb. He's only trading at 11 cents, so who really cares about him?
Yeah.
Moving on, or is there anything you want to say about those races that we talked about in Indiana just now?
I just want to say that Joe Donnelly is definitely he's very likely to lose his race upcoming. Trump won Indiana very solidly, and Joe Donnelly has been having to react accordingly. He supported the tax cuts bill because he's so fearful of his constituents and how they'll vote in November.
Yeah, so that'll definitely be one of the ones to watch out for, as we've talked about before. Moving on to North Carolina, there's no Senate race or governor race in North Carolina, so there's only one district race we want to look at. It's an R plus 7 district, so it's probably going to be held by Republicans by an easy margin. The guy who's the incumbent Republican is currently trading at 99 cents unpredicted, so he's going to win re-election there. At least in his primary. Now, in the Democratic primary, there's 2 people that I want to point out here for that district. The first is Linda Coleman. She's the former North Carolina Director of State Personnel, and she was also the Democratic nominee for the North Carolina Lieutenant Governorship back in 2012 and 2016. She lost both times. She does not support term limits. She is currently trading at 58 cents unpredicted, which is 1st place, so she's probably going to win the Democratic primary for that district. So, she at least has some sort of money and stuff behind her because of the fact that she is kind of well known among the Democratic Party in that state. The other person running is Ken Romley. He's a management consultant. He's trading at 48 cents, so it's possible he might win because of how close he's trading, but I think Linda Coleman's probably going to win that Democratic primary. There's also a 3rd person running named Wendy May, but, who really cares about her? She's not going to do anything. Moving on, though, to the next state, unless you want to say anything about North Carolina.
No.
Okay, so moving on to the next state is Ohio. Now, Ohio currently has a governor race that's going to replace current Ohio Governor John Kasich, who we definitely do not like at all. But Ohio is currently an R+3 state as a CPVI, so Republicans are favored to win statewide, although it is really, really close and could swing to Democrats. But we always want to make sure that we know who's running for different governor races, just so we know, who we might be dealing with. But in the Republican primary, there's two people running. First is, I'm just going to go for the rest of these in order of who's trading, first, second, third, etc. First is Mark DeWine. He's the current Ohio Attorney General. He's a former U.S. Senator, former Ohio Lieutenant Governor, former U.S. Representative, and former Ohio State Senator. He was a Kasich delegate at the 2016 RNC. He's currently trading at 83 cents unpredicted, so he is probably going to win the primary here on Tuesday. He's probably going to be the Republican nominee in November. The second person is Mary Taylor, who's the current Ohio Lieutenant Governor. She's a former Ohio State Auditor and former Ohio State Representative. Also was a Kasich delegate at the 2016 RNC. Currently trading 15 cents unpredicted, so she's probably not going to win that. Now, in the Democratic primary, there's two people we want to focus on. First off is Richard Cordray. He's actually the former director of the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. He was in that position for 5 years under President Obama. So he definitely has some big name, nationwide Democrat support behind him. He's also the former Ohio Attorney General, former Ohio Solicitor General, and former Ohio State Representative. He's been endorsed by U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren and Cleveland Mayor Frank Jackson, trading right now at 87 cents in first place. So he's probably going to be the Democratic nominee for Ohio's governor in November. Second up is Dennis Kucinich. He's a former U.S. Representative, former Ohio State Senator, former Mayor of Cleveland. He also wants Medicare for all, but he has been endorsed by the group Our Revolution, which is a Bernie Sanders group that likes to, essentially nominate their own or support their own, very socialist people. Luckily for us, he's only trading at 11 cents unpredicted, so he's probably not going to win the primary on Tuesday. Now, for Ohio, they do have a Senate race that is upcoming. Ohio, again, a state that Trump won by 9 points, currently has a Democrat senator, so it's one of the ones that they have a chance of losing and Republicans have a chance of winning. Now, Sherrod Brown is the current incumbent Democrat. He's running unopposed, so he's going to be the nominee in November for the Democrats. Now, on the Republican side, there's a couple people running, but there's only one person that we really need to not worry about. There's only one person who we really care about, and that is Jim Renacci. He's the current U.S. Representative for Ohio's 16th Congressional District and the former mayor of Wadsworth, Ohio. He was endorsed by President Trump, and because of that, his chances of winning extremely skyrocketed for that Senate race. There's also people running as Melissa Atkinson, Don Elijah Eckhart, Mike Gibbons, and Dan Killey. But Jim Renacci, I'm certain, is going to win the primary, or the Republican primary, so it's probably going to be this guy against Sherrod Brown come November. So he's definitely the type of guy who we would want to throw our support behind. And if you're listening to this and you live in Ohio and it's between May 6th and May 8th, get out there, vote for Jim Renacci. And finally, there's only one primary House district that we want to look at in Ohio, and that is the 12th district, which is an open primary. And there's three people running in the Republican primary. First off is Melanie Lenigan. Now, she supports building the wall. She's currently been endorsed by Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio and Representative Mark Meadows of North Carolina. She's trading at 51 cents unpredicted, so she's probably going to win that race as well. In second place at 40 cents is Troy Balderson, who is a current Ohio State Senator and a former Ohio State Representative. And the third person is Kevin Bacon, not the actor Kevin Bacon. This is a different Kevin Bacon. He's currently an Ohio State Senator and a former Ohio State Representative. He's only trading at 5 cents, so he is not going to win that. Now, on the Democrat side, first off is Danny O'Connor, who's the Franklin County, Ohio Recorder, trading at 61 cents, so he's probably going to be the Democrat nominee for that House race. Second up is Zach Scott, Franklin County Sheriff, trading at 25 cents. In third place is John Russell. Don't really know anything else about him. There's a few other people running, but I don't care about them at all. So, Enzo, do you have anything to say about these Ohio primaries that we just went off real quick?
No.
All right, then moving on to the final state here is West Virginia. They do not have a governor race going on there, so that's good. Now, this is also, again, a state where Democrat Senator in-state Trump won big league. The senator that they currently have is Joe Manchin, and in the Democrat primary, he does have an opponent, but he's currently trading at 97 cents, so yeah, he's going to be the nominee. He doesn't stand a chance of losing in the primary. But there are three people running in the Republican primary that we want to look at. First off is Evan Jenkins. He's currently trading at 52 cents, which is first on Predicted. He's the representative currently in Congress for West Virginia's 3rd District. He's a former West Virginia state senator, former West Virginia state representative, former CEO of the West Virginia Medical Foundation. So he's probably going to be the guy that faces against Joe Manchin. So Evan Jenkins, definitely the type of guy we want to get our support behind if he wins. In second place is Patrick Morrissey. He's only trading at 44 cents, but I have a feeling that Patrick Morrissey might actually upset Evan Jenkins and win the Republican primary here because he's currently the West Virginia Attorney General, and he's one of the ones who joined the lawsuit against Obamacare. And if you remember when we talked about the 7 states that are suing over DACA, West Virginia was one of those states, meaning this is one of those guys. So he has been endorsed by Senator Ted Cruz, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, and Steve Bannon. So the fact that those three guys, or at least two of those, are people that I kind of like, especially Steve Bannon, he's the guy who I hope wins, and because he's been endorsed by those people, I have a feeling he might pull off the upset in the Republican primary. We'll just have to wait and see. And the last person's only trading at 10 cents on Predicted, and that is Don Blankenship. Now, if you've been following politics over the last couple of weeks, you've probably heard of Don Blankenship because he's the guy that made that really weird campaign ad hating on Mitch McConnell. Did you see that campaign ad, Enzo?
No, but I have friends that were talking about Don Blankenship.
Yeah, this guy, I don't support him. I don't like him. He's actually, I wrote down he's anti-endorsed by Donald Trump Jr. I'm going to paraphrase what Donald Trump Jr. said, but he essentially said, look, I don't care who you support in the Republican primary, but don't vote for this guy. But here's the reason why I want to bring him up and why I really don't like him. Not only is he a weird guy, he's the former CEO of Massey Energy Company, which I believe was a coal mining company in West Virginia, and it was one of the largest, if not the largest, coal mining companies in West Virginia. He served a year in jail for conspiring to violate safety standards after a mine explosion killed 29 miners back in April of 2010. And so this is a guy who I don't like. I don't like his history. I don't like his past. He's bad news. He would lose against Joe Manchin, I have a feeling, if he was the nominee. So luckily he's only trading at 10 cents. He's probably not going to get it. But again, West Virginia's Senate race is definitely one of those that we need to be watching out for. And the only House District race in West Virginia we want to look at is House District 3, because of the fact that Evan Jenkins is the representative there. He's not seeking re-election because he's, running for the Senate in the Republican primary. The person trading first for the Republican primary, this district is R plus 23, so no chance any Democrat's going to win it. Currently trading at 58 cents is Carol Mueller, who's a West Virginia state representative, and she works in real estate. And at 34 cents in second place is Conrad Lucas, who is the former chair of the Republican Party of West Virginia. And there's a few other people running in that primary, but they don't stand a chance. So that's the primaries that are upcoming this Tuesday. I know we've taken probably a little bit too long describing these, but I just want to make sure that I'm thorough. And also, we promised that we were going to cover every House race and every Senate race, governor race, etc. Obviously, that takes so much longer time, and we haven't done that, so that's why I'm kind of taking a little bit extra time in these episodes, and we're going to be doing these, whatever's the Sunday before that primary, just write this stuff down, so it'll kind of be like this format every few weeks for essentially the rest of the year, so just, keep that in mind that this 2018 election/voter fraud section might be a little bit longer going forward here until the midterm elections are over, so
yeah,
but that's expected. So now that I'm done talking, you ready for me to talk some more about this poll that came out? We're done talking about primaries here now. So the next thing that we have up is a new poll that shows that Democrats are losing ground with millennials. A new Reuters Ipsos poll shows that the enthusiasm for the Democratic Party is waning among millennials. The survey shows that voters aged 18 to 34 show their support for Democrats over Republicans for Congress has slipped by 9% over the past 2 years to 46% overall, compared to only 28% for Republicans. They also increasingly say that the Republican Party has a better handling over the economy. A growing share say they're undecided, would support third parties, or would not vote at all. The shift away from Democrats was more pronounced among white millennials, who accounted for nearly two-thirds of the millennial vote in 2016. Although nearly two-thirds of millennials do not support President Trump, their distaste for him does not extend to all Republicans or translate into more votes for Democratic congressional candidates. Terry Hood, a 34-year-old black man from Louisiana who voted for Clinton in 2016, said he's considering voting Republican in the 2018 midterms, saying, quote, "It sounds strange to me to say this about the Republicans, but they're helping with even the small things. They're taking less taxes out of my paycheck. I noticed that."
So yeah, it's not necessarily that they're coming to us, they're just being disenchanted by Democrats, and this is what we need to take advantage of. And, the quote here is just very indicative of, hey, we need to have policies that make sense for the average person, because at the end of the day, when they feel the benefits, they'll say, I'm going to vote for the guys that did this for me, not the people that want to, say, raise my taxes like Democrats do.
Yeah, precisely. So, that doesn't bid well for the Democrats up, with the midterms coming up, showing that they are losing ground among millennials. And as millennials become a higher percentage block of the, of the voting share of people that actually vote, less Democrat votes is not going to help Democrats at all. So that's good for our side.
Yeah. So with that said, let's go on to the bottom of the stack for the national news. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was a rapper has threatened Kanye West's life. Daz Dillinger, former member of Snoop Dogg's rapping entourage, has called for a gang hit against Kanye West for his support of President Trump. In a video posted on Instagram, later taken down, he said the following: "Yo, national alert, all the Crips out there, y'all fuck Kanye up. Better not see you in concert, better not see you around LBC, better not see you around California. Stay in Calabasas, you hear me? Because we got a Crip alert for Kanye." He also called for Kanye to be fucked up on his verified Twitter account.
Well, I think we need to make sure that Kid Kanye is our protected person here, because he's doing a lot of good work, as we saw. Trump would not have 22% support among black men if it was not for Kanye. So, if that means giving him Secret Service protection, I am totally down for it. Right, Enzo?
I don't think he needs the... I think he has security, but it really goes to show just how crazed people are because he is a black man who supports the president, a prominent black man at least. Today I was watching some of the skits they had on SNL. There was a new one where Donald Glover is in it, and everyone's freaking out about Kanye tweets, and they're in like this situation where they're in like this creepy forest and they need to keep quiet, but every single time he tweets they just have to outburst. And really it goes to show that people can't handle someone with such a platform who's actually thinking for themselves when it goes against what is the established line of thought. And it's gotten so crazy to the point to where people want to kill Kanye for it.
Yeah, and so, I think you said that perfectly.
Yeah. Let's go to the next story on the Boy Scouts, or I guess formerly the Boy Scouts now.
Yeah, well, they're changing their name to be more gender neutral. In an effort to be more inclusive and to deal with declining membership, the Boy Scouts of America are dropping the word boy from their name altogether. The new name will be the Scouts BSA, which is interesting because BSA still stands for Boy Scouts of America. However, the Cub Scouts for kids aged 7 to 10 will not be changing its name because they say it's already gender neutral, and only the Boy Scouts for kids aged 10 to 17 will be changing their name. This comes after the organization voted in 2015 to end its ban on gay leaders, and in 2017 to allow girls and transgenders to join. However, Girl Scouts are staying the same, because Girl Scouts of USA CEO Sylvia Acevedo released a statement saying, quote, "Girl Scouts is the premier leadership development organization for girls. We are, and will remain, the first choice for girls and parents." So, At least the Girl Scouts are being smart about this. In this entire situation with the whole Boy Scouts, all I can really do is think back to that one funny little video meme that's kind of gone around, and it's got this like fat chick, and she's talking to Ben Shapiro, and she says something like, why should only boys be allowed in the Boy Scouts? And he says, because it's in the name, Boy Scouts. Well, hey, it's not in the name anymore, so I guess she won that argument now. Only time would tell.
I just think it's so crazy that this is even happening. It really shows that there's attack on, young adolescent boys. I think that there is a benefit from them having their own organizations, but any organization for men now has to be taken down, and there's no calls for the opposite with the female organizations. And for all these young boys, it's an opportunity for them to bond together away from having to impress girls, but now that they're integrating it with girls, it's just going to change the whole dynamic in a way that I don't think is going to be beneficial to boys in the same way that the Boy Scouts used to be.
No, you know how they used to always have those little band camp jokes? Like, that one time at band camp, now it's going to be that one time at the Boy Scouts picnic.
Yeah,
so.
There's going to be instances of that.
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be instances of rape of little girls. We know that's going to happen. I hate to say it, but things like that do happen. So, you're only opening yourself up to these sorts of situations. Anyways, want to move on?
Yeah, let's go to the next story. The next story is on public education and how it's not actually teaching children. A new report from the National Assessment of Educational Progress, a part of the U.S. Department of Education, shows that 65% of 8th graders in public schools were not proficient in reading, and 67 were not proficient in math. In major cities, it's even worse. In Detroit, only 5% were proficient in math and 7% in reading. In Cleveland, only 11% were proficient in math and 10% in reading. And in Baltimore, only 11% were proficient in math and 13% in reading. The Department of Education's National Center for Education Statistics describes proficiency in math for 8th graders as being able to understand the connections between fractions, percentages, decimals, and other mathematical topics such as algebra and functions. Students at this level are expected to have a thorough understanding of basic level arithmetic operations and understanding sufficient for problem solving in practical situations. The NCES defines proficiency in reading for 8th graders as being able to provide relevant information and summarize main ideas and themes. They should be able to make and support inferences about a text, connect parts of a text, and analyze text features. Students performing at this level should be able to fully substantiate judgment about content and presentation of content. So with the definitions on what proficiency is, it's not like this very high ceiling that they're setting on what proficiency is, but still with public education in this country, it's failing most children.
No, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think we've known that the public education system in the United States has been a failure for a very long time. That's not really anything that's shocking or surprising to people. However, it just goes to show you that, you're raising a generation of people where, look, if you got these cities where only 11% are proficient in math, Detroit only 5% proficient in math, these people are going to grow up, okay? They're going to go to high school. They probably won't go to college. They might make it into college. Who knows? I doubt a kid that's not proficient in math is going to be proficient in math later in their life, especially if, the schools have already failed them already at this point. They're going to continue to fail them later in life. And what's even worse is the fact that these people are then going to get jobs, or at least try to get jobs. What's even worse, these people are going to vote, okay? Imagine if 11% of all people in Baltimore that voted were not proficient. Imagine if only 11% of people in Baltimore that voted were proficient in math. Would you say that, that's canceling out the vote of people who actually know what they're doing? Because I think so. I mean, I really don't think that uneducated people should be voting. You're raising a generation of uneducated people. Thankfully, President Trump, I think we talked about this last week or maybe the week before, about how he's trying to get the federal government out of local education. that might make the situation better. It might not. And, something needs to be done. Anything needs to be done. A change definitely needs to be done.
This is just a statistic I know personally, and it's a statistic from the National Institute of Literacy. Roughly 47% of the adults in Detroit are functionally illiterate.
Yeah.
So you talk about how we're raising these generations. This is already fundamental to some of these cities. It's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. And, if we want to disrupt this long-going system of undereducation, it needs radical reforms. We can't just expect the same, one-size-fit-all education system to try and save these children, because it's demonstrably not.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And, I really don't know what to do to solve this problem, because it's not like throwing money at the situation is going to change it. If anything, that's just going to be a waste of money. It's going to probably make things worse. We've been trying to throw money at situations, so...
They try to talk about how education in the United States is all underfunded and whatnot, but per child, we spend almost more than any other nation.
Yeah.
You look at places like Baltimore, which we've talked about the issues in education in Baltimore, I believe it was less than 10% even legitimately qualified to graduate high school or something we talked about months ago. These children, they're spending somewhere $14,000, $15,000 a child, and that's more than it costs to go to college in a lot of places for a year. Say you have in-state tuition at a Texas public college, that's only around $5,000 a semester. So for the money that we put into it, we're definitely not getting anything back. So maybe another time on a midweek or something, I could talk about what could be done to fix these problems, but just to make it very clear, there's a ton of problems in public education.
Yeah, that would definitely be something to look into in the future.
Yeah, and I do know some proposed ideas, but obviously this isn't the place to talk about them all. But
right.
Let's go on to the next story. It's a Texas story as well. A teen inspired by ISIS planned on shooting up a Dallas mall. 17-year-old Mateen Aziz Yarand of Plano, Texas, planned to shoot up a Dallas area mall inspired by ISIS, according to Collin County District Attorney. He spent more than $1,400 in weapons and equipment and attempted to recruit others to do the attack with him. Authorities learned of the plan when he began to communicate with an FBI informant. He is charged with criminal solicitation of capital murder and making a terroristic threat. His bond is set at $3 million, and current online records show that he does not have an attorney.
He only spent $1,400 on weapons and equipment. That can't get you too much, I don't think. I doubt he's using a rifle.
In terms of firearms, maybe you could get one or two, but...
You could probably get maybe
a
couple of pistols, but even then, if you're trying to get anything higher than a 22 or a 9mm, he couldn't have had... Yeah, you're right. He couldn't have had more than just one or two guns at the most. But that being said, I'm glad that we got this guy before he did anything. 17 years old, that's not
but
even...
also, he's 17, so...
Yeah,
you
can't legally buy those weapons. So, yeah, it really goes to show you just the black market that's out there for guns right now, and how easy it is for people like this guy.
Even in a nice place like Plano. Because, I spent about a month earlier this year in Plano, and it's one of the nicest places in Texas. But even there, the stuff can sprout. Inspired by ISIS, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, ready to move on to the next story?
Yeah, let's go to the last story for national news.
So the last story for national news is something that is kind of ongoing right now, but it did start a couple of days ago, and that is one of the volcanoes on the Hawaiian Islands has erupted. Excuse me. Thousands of residents have been forced to evacuate after Hawaii's Kilauea volcano erupted, causing a dangerous lava flow that seeped through cracks in the street pavement. The geological activity has been increasing over the recent days, including a magnitude 6.9 earthquake that shook Hawaii's Big Island. It's the largest earthquake to strike Hawaii since 1975. So far, no major injuries have been recorded, but the USGS has warned that the volcano may continue to erupt over the next few days. The FAA has also imposed flight restrictions over the area through Monday for all but relief operations. So, I've been kind of following this story myself over the last few days. A lot of people were wondering if it was like the big volcano or if it was actually going to like go off and kill a bunch of people. It looks like, at least as of now, it hasn't completely erupted. This was definitely just a minor eruption. It wasn't a major one. That being said, there is like about 1,500 people that have had to flee their homes and been forced to evacuate. So hopefully there isn't any major damage that comes of this. Can you imagine how bad it would be if the Big Island's big volcano went off? Like a major eruption, like a Mount St. Helens style eruption? You'd never see the end of that thing.
It would shut down everything out there.
Yeah, Hawaii would, granted it's multiple islands, and, Honolulu being the biggest city where the majority of the population of Hawaii lives is on that island, is, several hundred miles away from the Big Island. That being said, they're all volcanoes, and if one erupts, there's probably activity on others as well, because they're all kind of connected there. So it's just one of those things where you just got to, keep looking at it, hope nothing happens, and we'll see where it goes from there. So far, it looks like nothing's happened, but, we'll keep those people in our prayers to make sure and hope that nothing bad happens to them.
Yeah. And with that said, let's get into some current year college craziness.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. You're fucking a white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, cis, scum.
You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us!
It's time for some current year college craziness.
Current year college craziness. Today on the show, we talk about the crazy stuff that happens on college campuses here and abroad. And the first thing we want to talk about is actually a poll. A poll that is very depressing, actually. Is a poll that shows from Gallup that the majority of college students prefer diversity to free speech. The new Gallup survey found that 53% of college students believe that promoting diversity is more important than free speech. The survey found that 46% take the opposite view and believe that free speech is the higher value. Men and Republicans are more likely to value free speech, while women and Democrats are more likely to value diversity and inclusivity. So it's not stuff that we intuitively don't know, but it's not numbers that make me feel good about reality.
No, definitely not. What it really goes to show you is just more proof as to just the polarization that we're seeing in our country right now, especially on college campuses. Frankly, I'm surprised that 53% number isn't even higher with the way things are. There are a lot of, I'm not going to say it's a silent majority. It's more like the silent minority, more like the silent almost half that, aren't going to talk up about these sort of things. But people do believe, at least as far as this shows, the slight majority, albeit, of college students do believe that promoting diversity is more important than free speech. I mean, you and I definitely side on the side that free speech is definitely the more important and higher value. And you're seeing that, issues like this of people literally almost like arguing back and forth between these things are part of the reason why, no one wants to go and do things. Part of the reason why you see, what was that, like 20% of college students believe in using like violence to shut down other people's free speech that they disagree with. Those definitely, that 20% definitely falls in line with that 53. So, and if you look at that, that means that of that 53, what's 20% of 50%? 2 out of 5, that's 40%. So you're looking at 40% of the people that sided with the diversity is more important than free speech side also believe that you can use violence to shut down people's free speech. 40% of that.
Yeah.
It's insane. And that's definitely not going to bid well for the future.
And, the majority of our colleges is female, and the majority of our colleges is Democrat as opposed to Republican. So that's the way these things are heading, and it's not very promising. And, for all that they talk about gaining a higher education, they're not really learning anything of value. So, let's go on to the next story about UC Berkeley, a college we've talked about on this program. Who knows how many times?
Almost every week, to be honest.
But almost every week. But the newest thing out of Berkeley is that UC Berkeley is considering defunding their College Republicans chapter. On Thursday, the student government at the University of California, Berkeley will vote on defunding the campus chapter of the College Republicans and transferring the funds to the Black Student Union. The proposal was created by Berkeley student Senator Reza Estacio, who claims without evidence that the College Republicans have broken campus rules and are therefore eligible for defunding. The Berkeley College Republicans have fired back, claiming that Estacio's proposal is poorly researched and unscrupulous and based on a complete falsehood. Ari Cohn from the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education said that if Berkeley defunds the College Republicans, it would be a violation of their First Amendment rights because funds must be distributed in a viewpoint-neutral fashion.
Yeah, it's one thing for them to claim, the College Republicans broke rules, therefore we should defund them. It's another thing to say, we're going to go ahead and take their money and give it to the Black Student Union instead. That's definitely distributing money in a non-viewpoint neutral fashion for these people. I'm not sure whether or not they'll actually vote for it. I'm curious to see what the outcome is. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. But it's Berkeley. What are you going to do?
It's insane that they're even having to deal with this, though.
Yeah, and College Republicans, they didn't do anything wrong. I mean, to be honest. They're being targeted because of who they are.
Hates them for their political beliefs.
Yeah.
So. Going on to the next story, we have another study on university bias, actually, since we were just talking about how these institutions are biased.
Yeah.
An extensive study of 8,688 tenure-back professors at 51 of the top 66 ranked liberal arts colleges in the U.S. published by the National Association of Scholars found that the ratio of faculty members registered as Democrats compared to Republicans was a stunning 10.4 to 1. If two military colleges, West Point and Annapolis, that are technically classified as liberal arts colleges are removed, the ratio climbs to 12.7 to 1. Mitchell Landberg, associate professor of business at Brooklyn College, said that around 40% of colleges in the study have 0 faculty members that are registered Republicans. Nearly 80% of the 51 colleges had so few Republican faculty members that they were statistically insignificant. Some ratios broken down by academic fields include communications, 108 to 0, no registered Republicans. Anthropology, 56 to 0. Theater, 29.5 to 1. History, 17.4 to 1. Political science, 8.2 to 1. Mathematics, 5.6 to 1. Economics, 5.5 to 1. And the lowest was engineering at 1.6 to 1. So even that ratio, there's still more Democrats.
And if you remember back when we were interviewing Eric Burkhart, he mentioned that, the fact that higher education does have a left-wing bias to it doesn't necessarily bother him. And, to a degree, it almost doesn't bother me. But when you actually look at the numbers and compare it, it's astounding just how biased these universities are, especially when you look at the fact that 80% of those 51 colleges had so few Republican faculty members that they were statistically insignificant. I mean, almost every single professor I had when I went to college was a liberal or a registered Democrat. I think only one of them, I know for a fact, was a registered Republican. I had I kind of had a little, I had a feeling that another one was, but, there's no real way to tell. But yeah, it really sucks that, you don't have enough opposing viewpoints, especially coming from the right on, college campuses. So I really don't know. I mean, what are you going to do? Fire people? These are tenure-backed professors. These are the people that can't get fired. So
yeah. But it's crazy. You know, looking back at my educational history in college, I had classes in theater and education. I'm pretty sure I didn't have a single professor that politically agreed with me. I did have no, wait, I did have one that I believe was a Republican, but she did not like President Trump. So I guess that's the one. But I don't know. Throughout my time in college, I guess I had around, I mean, I'm guessing like 20 to 30 professors or something. Maybe it's just a guess, but only one out of them is not anything to really write home about.
Yeah, and you know what's kind of funny? Thinking back at mine, like I said, only one that I know for a fact was a Republican. The only other one, the one that I had that suspicion of being a Republican, interestingly enough, was a black female. And remember, we said in that poll that, you know, before the whole Kanye thing, only like 3% of black females supported President Trump. And I know that this professor had supported President Trump. So that was an extreme anomaly right there.
Yeah. Going now on to the last story for Current Year College Craziness. It's about our former university, Texas State. Texas State student government accuses TPUSA TPS USA of promoting the Second Amendment only for whites. Members of the Texas State University student government have accused the campus chapter of Turning Point USA of promoting Second Amendment rights only for whites. TPUSA fired back, pointing out that one of their upcoming speakers is Antonia Okafor, a black female gun right activist. In the April 19th column for Texas State students newspaper, the University Star, public relations senior Temi Ikadaski dismissed Okafor and her invitation to address TPUSA as tokenism. Ikadaski argues that because blacks are only a small minority of gun right activists, neither Okafor's views nor her invitation by TPUSA should be taken seriously.
They're literally creating their own, like, argument here, if you understand kind of what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying, you're doing this only for whites, and then they say, no, we actually, like, have, you know, there are a lot of blacks that support us. In fact, one of our upcoming people is black, and they say, no, but she's only a token, therefore you're wrong and we're right. God, I'm so done.
You can break it down in another way, okay? The campus chapter president of Turning Point USA at Texas State is Stormy Rodriguez. She's a Hispanic female. She's not white.
Yeah.
But they're still accusing the organization of promoting the Second Amendment only for whites. It's like, based on what? Like, how are you inferring this?
Well,
because I don't know.
Well, I mean, I was going to say that they're inferring this because they believe that they're right. They're literally dismissing. Yeah. Literally, it says they're dismissing the opposite viewpoint simply because they don't agree with it at this point.
Yeah.
You know? Granted, I mean, I'll agree. Yeah, blacks are a minority of gun rights activists, but that doesn't mean that it's only for whites. And if you have someone who is a black gun rights activist, a female black gun rights activist at that, who, you know, in the gun rights community, especially in the Turning Point USA community, is a well-known and well-liked person. I mean, I've met Antonia Okafor before. I have her phone number even. And she's a very nice person. And the fact that she's essentially being targeted as a token because she supports gun rights and is a black female, it's insane. And these people are, they're crazy.
Yeah. With that said, that is your college craziness for the week. And let's get straight into international news. Not too much to go over this week. Let's start off with Asia.
So the first thing is probably the biggest story of international news this week, and that is some updates on the North Korean situation. This time, North Korea has agreed to release the U.S. detainees. Ahead of the summit meeting with President Trump, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un has released 3 U.S. citizens that have been detained for years in North Korean prison camps. Newly inaugurated Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said of the upcoming Senate, quote, "We are in the beginning stages of work, and the outcome is certainly yet unknown. But one thing is certain. This administration will not repeat the mistakes of the past. Our eyes are wide open. It's time to solve this once and for all. A bad deal is not an option." So, North Korea, in a sign of good faith, They've agreed to release the three U.S. Citizens that have been detained in North Korea. I believe they're actually still in Pyongyang right now, but they're being kept in like a hotel under, from what we've heard, is a lot better conditions. Probably not perfect, but it is a good sign of good faith. And if North Korea is willing to do that, that's a lot farther than they've been willing to go in the past. It seems like President Trump has done a very good job of trying to release U.S. citizens that have been detained in other countries. I mean, that happened with Egypt, that happened with North Korea, it happened with one other country that's, I can't really remember the name of, but, we've seen this time and time again, whereas past administrations, you didn't hear about this stuff. You didn't hear about presidents negotiating the release of U.S. detainees. But here we go. North Korea, one of the most brutal regimes on the planet, says, you know what? As a sign of good faith, we're going to release your people. Again, like we said near the beginning of the program, Donald Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for this thing. No one else was able to get this stuff done.
Yeah, it's really great stuff. And, I mean, we're expecting even more to come, so I'm really excited and for the potential that these Korean negotiations have with the upcoming summit.
Yeah.
Going on to the other thing, something that I just kind of wanted to run by people that they might be unaware of, and that is trade between Russia and China is up massively. Chinese officials this week have announced that trade between China and Russia is up 30% this year so far. The uptick in exchange takes the value of their trade to over $100 billion. The largest increase in trade has been in the energy sector as China begins to reduce their usage of coal for Russian oil. So I mention all of this because at the same time we're putting all of these economic sanctions on Russia, trying to debilitate them. But they just look to different trade partners when they do so. It's so useless when we try to do these things because we're not punishing the Russians by doing so. We're just making them look elsewhere.
Yeah, that's true. So, it's one of those things where as China becomes more of a world superpower, more so than it already is, you're going to see them cutting deals and trading more with other countries, especially countries that might have sanctions that the U.S. has put on them. So it's just one of those things where, just be aware of it, look forward, and hopefully, we'll be able to take sanctions away from Russia in the future so we won't have to worry about, China, essentially benefiting because of it.
Ideally, yeah. Let's go on to some stories in Europe. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is Greece is currently undergoing something of its own illegal alien crisis. In April, Greece apprehended almost 3,000 illegal aliens from Turkey who crossed the Erebos River into East Thrace. If you understand the geography of it, Turkey actually has part of its nation in Europe bordering Greece, so that's where they're crossing. This comes after EU officials have declared the illegal immigration crisis of 2015 in Greece, where at the time they had something like over 850,000 illegal aliens coming to the country that year.
That's amazing.
But they've reduced it dramatically as of last year. Then they declared the crisis over, but it looks like it might be starting up again. And Turkey has repeatedly said that they would loosen their border if money, free travel visas, and progress on their EU membership application isn't made. So this could actually be them trying to punish the European Union by flooding Europe with illegal aliens through Greece, which Greece can't support, thousands upon thousands of illegal aliens coming in. It's such a poor nation.
Greece can barely support its own people. There's no way it's going to be able to support, even a couple of illegal aliens crossing their border, let alone 3,000 or who knows how many even more. So
yeah, the situation out there in Greece isn't the best. The other story I want to talk about out of Europe is also a story to do with migrants being deported. And this is a story in a southern German town of Ellwagen. On Monday night, police arrived at a refugee reception center with orders to find and deport a 23-year-old man from Togo, Africa. The police detained him in their car, and when a group of around 50 migrants from the center demanded the man's release in an aggressive manner, the police, to prevent the situation from getting violent, had to give the guy back to the angry crowd, and they had to barricade themselves inside the reception center's ward. The mob grew from around 50 at the beginning to, at its most, around 150 people at one point. A security guard was sent to the police as a messenger and told them the following. Their message was an ultimatum. Either the police officers remove the handcuffs from the Togolese within 2 minutes, or the migrants stormed the gates of the ward. The police gave the security guard the keys to the handcuffs of the Togo man, and he got away. So, yeah, this is one of the most insane stories I've seen to have to do with migrants in a goddamn while. You know, this is a situation where the migrants were threatening to attack police officers, and they weren't afraid to do so. You know, there was also reports that they damaged one of the police cars going out there. And this is just, you know, just goes to show that you can't have these people in your country. They're on their own side. They're not siding with you. They don't care about your rules and laws. They care about taking care of themselves and their own. And they'll, you know, kill you if you get in the way of that.
Yeah, and if you were to do anything, you know, say fight back against them, you're all of a sudden you're the bad guys, and you're the ones that are going to get prosecuted and whatnot. So it's like, you know, at what point do you put your own citizens first before these people that, you know, frankly, should not be in your country? But
yeah,
it's insane.
Continuing on, let's talk about some stuff in the Middle East.
So the first three things that we're going to talk about here in the Middle East all kind of have to do with each other. First off, there was an airstrike in northern Syria that was carried out by Israel earlier this week, killed 36 pro-Assad fighters. Most of them were actually Iranians. They bombed an arms depot, and the explosion, or I should say the fire and then subsequent explosion that happened afterwards was so large that seismic monitors picked it up as a magnitude 2.6 earthquake. So, you know, when the U.S. launched its airstrike in Syria about, you know, was 3 weeks, a month ago, we didn't kill anybody. Israel does not care. They're just going to bomb and kill whoever they want. You know, if you're wondering about whether or not there's going to be more war in the Middle East, it's not the U.S. that's starting it, it's Israel. And that kind of goes to the second story that we have here. And this was kind of the thing that took over the international news for most of the earlier of the week, and that is that Israel is claiming that Iran has violated the Iran nuclear deal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu revealed intelligence Monday showing what he claims is Iran brazenly lying about its nuclear weapons program. Israeli officials claimed the information was attained in the past 2 weeks, including over 55,000 pages and 55,000 files on 183 CDs. Like, we literally mean like CD-ROM type CDs. You know, it's like, I wonder, these people not know how to use flash drives anymore. Anyways, Netanyahu showed the information via a PowerPoint presentation during a national address. The Knesset, am I pronouncing that right, Enzo? Israel's parliament?
Yes.
Knesset? Or is it Knesset? Is the K silent?
I believe it's the Knesset.
Okay, yeah. The Knesset, which is Israel's parliament, voted after Netanyahu's speech to allow the prime minister the ability to declare war with only the defense minister's approval. Previously, a declaration of war could only be ordered by the security cabinet. So they voted to give Netanyahu more power to declare war a lot easier. Essentially, he could do it whenever he wanted. I mean, the defense minister, you know, let's face it, if Netanyahu tells him to approve it, he's going to approve it. Anyways, since then, Netanyahu has spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and French President Emmanuel Macron, and plans on speaking with leaders from China and the UK very soon. So, Israel's definitely stepping up their anti-Iranian talk. You know, there was a lot of speculation that they might even start bombing Iran earlier in the week. It looks like, you know, that hasn't happened yet. It's still a very strong possibility. The last thing we need is, you know, Israel dragging us into another war in the Middle East, especially against Iran. I mean, I definitely don't think we need to be going to war against Iran. You know, a lot of people say that we should be taking the side of Iran. I'm still a little speculative about that because of the fact that Iran actually does not like the United States. So, you know, although I don't feel like we should be attacking them and going to war, I still don't think that they are our ally. They could be a better ally. We could treat them better. That would definitely go a long way. But, you know, what do you have to say about that, Enzo?
Yeah. we definitely don't want to be involved with Iran. It wouldn't be an easy war, to say the least. But also, Iran is allied with Russia, with Syria. They would have tons of support in the area. I'm not saying that this would be even a war that we could win, you know? And what would be the terms of victory in Iran? You know, I heard recently Trump talking about the possibility of regime change in Iran, and I don't think that would end up being good for anyone. You know, it's just going to bring more instability to a region that's already very unstable. And I don't like having Israelis doing strikes into territory that's not theirs, which could potentially start a major war that we'd have to fight, all because, you know, Iranians are in Syria, which Bashar al-Assad welcomed Iranians into Syria.
Yeah, it's his country.
We never talk about that.
It's his country. He has the right to let in whoever he wants to fight on his side, you know. And so, yeah, there's no reason that Israel should be doing that. And, you know, the one thing I will say is that public opinion support for war against Iran is extremely, extremely low in the United States, which, you know, it's even lower than support for going to war in Syria, you know. And so that is part of the reason why we haven't done anything against Iran. And so hopefully nothing will happen that will get us involved, but I do not see this thing ending peacefully, especially going on to the next story, which is about John Kerry. Former Secretary of State John Kerry secretly met with Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif 2 weeks ago in New York to discuss ways of preserving the Iran deal, which is meant to limit Iran's nuclear weapons program. Kerry has also met with German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, top EU official Federica Mogherini, and French President Emmanuel Macron in both New York and Paris. Many critics of John Kerry's moves have stated that the meetings are a violation of the Logan Act, which prohibits U.S. citizens from having private correspondence with the foreign government with the intent to influence the measures or conduct of any foreign government in relation to any disputes or controversies within the United States or to defeat the measures of the United States. You know, not a single person has ever been convicted under the Logan Act, but John Kerry is not in the United States government anymore. He is, by all sense and purposes, a private citizen. There is no reason that he should be meeting with other world leaders to try to influence their, you know, ability to essentially influence policies their policies with the United States. And frankly, if you're going to play the whole, you know, let's claim that everyone has violated the Logan Act card, this is probably the closest indication that you have. And so these people, you know, you think that once they're out of office, their reign is done. No, these people continue, especially John Kerry. The guy's a complete dick. And, you know, frankly, something needs to be done to make sure that he can't continue to be meeting with these people, because he is trying to undermine the government of the United States at this point. Because, you know, President Trump has talked about wanting to get out of the Iran deal. What do you think that's a good idea, or what do you think that's a bad idea? That's essentially what the United States government is heading towards at this point. If John Kerry is trying to, you know, whether you want to say he's lobbying foreign governments or not, he's trying to influence their policy in the United States. And that is definitely something that is not good. And frankly, you can consider that an act of treason.
Yeah. Let's go on now to the last story that we have for the Middle East.
So
it's about the white helmets.
Yeah, so finally, this is actually a good story coming out of the Middle East, and that is the U.S. State Department has stopped funding the white helmets, formerly known as the Syrian Civil Defense. Although the State Department has not made any formal declaration of cutting off funding, white helmets on the ground have stated that they have not received any U.S. funding in several weeks. The freeze comes after a freeze that President Trump put on $200 million in U.S. funding efforts for recovery in Syria in late March. The U.S., by the way, provides nearly 1/3 of the white helmets funding. So this is good news. You know, the white helmets are not good people. Frankly, I consider them their own terrorist organization. You know, both of us believe that they lied about the first Syrian chemical gas attack back in April of last year. We believe that they're also lying about the chemical attack that took place, you know, supposedly took place earlier this April. So, you know, I'm appalled that we even provide any funding for them at all. So
you can demonstrably show instances where they've faked instances of, you know, attacks on Bashar al-Assad against his own people.
They take pictures of it.
What they're there for is to try and incite Western powers to intervene against Assad in Syria. And, they don't care about killing children to do so and get the sympathy of the West to intervene in Syria, which is something that we're both very, very strongly against. The White Helmets, they're just the PR wing of the jihadi rebels out there.
So, good news is we're not funding them anymore. Bad news is we funded them up to this point. So
yeah. Let's go on now to the last story out of South America.
Yeah, so we're going to bring back up our favorite country in South America, Venezuela, Enzo. And we've got some information and updates about their hyperinflation rate. Venezuela's inflation rate, which is the largest in the world, has spiked from 4,966% to nearly 18,000% in just March and April. The International Monetary Fund predicts a rate of 13,864 at the end of April, which means it's over a little over 4,000% higher than what the International Monetary Fund predicted it to be. It's also right now increasing at a rate of about 80% per day. If the trend continues, the inflation rate could reach 100,000% by the end of the year. Now, if you're wondering just how much prices have changed, you're going to find out. 1 kilogram of meat costs about 2 million bolivars right now, back then, which is about $2.35. The monthly salary of a surgeon stood at a little less than 6 million bolivars in mid-April. Yes, you heard that right. The monthly salary of a surgeon right now is equivalent of about $7 US. Absolutely
insane.
Incredible. Yeah. The Venezuelan government doubled the minimum wage salary Monday to 2.5 million bolivars, a move that could make hyperinflation even worse. So, they doubled the minimum salary while they're already having 18,000% inflation rate. It's completely unsustainable.
Yeah.
That country, I'm surprised it's even still at least somewhat functioning at this point. I don't know what to say, dude. I mean, this situation's gone on for so long, it's not getting any better.
I've been reading stories now to where people just don't use money whatsoever. They only do, trade and services in terms of food. And, they're already past the point where you kill the dogs to survive. They're at the point now where there's gangs in their landfills over, the best garbage. And they'll kill you if you, snoop onto their territory. So it's extremely bad, the situation in Venezuela.
But, although Venezuela is a failed government, one thing that's not a failure is this episode. This episode is actually pretty good, and so I think we did good. Even though we had to use Skype, yeah.
Yeah, I think it turned out well. With that said, thank you for listening to another episode of Trump Public Radio, and have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.